How attractive is Cole Palmer? Cole has a very receding chin and a very narrow lower third. This could be due to years of frequent mouth breathing. His interocular distance is slightly smaller than average. He also has a slight negative can-foul tilt and unhealthy under eyes. Palmer's nose is well sized compared to his face, but it is slightly crooked and bent to the side. His nose also has a slight bump when you look at it from a side profile point of view. He has very weak cheekbones with a basically non-existent jawline structure, giving his face a long and acute shape. Cole's eyes are a good size and his lips are very plump, but sadly, they have a smaller width than they should compared to the size of his nose. Palmer is an example of an average looking guy with an overall rating of 4.5 out of 10. How attractive is Jude Bellingham? Jude has pointy elf-like ears, which are not typically seen as attractive. Luckily, his facial thirds are perfectly balanced and he has a great hairline in the upper third of his face. He has very visible high-set cheekbones with a square chin. His jawline is very visible since he has rather hollow cheeks, but sadly, he has a short ramus. Jude has almond-shaped eyes with a positive can-foul tilt and very minimal upper eyelid exposure. The only negative about his eye area is that he has very thin eyelashes. His nose is slightly too big compared to the space between his eyes. His lips are very full, but the width compared to the size of his nose is slightly below the ideal ratio. Even though he has pointy ears, they are still perfectly sized and in a great position. Jude Bellingham is considered above average with a rating of 7 out of 10. How attractive is Phil Foden? Phil's forehead is too big, making his facial thirds unbalanced. However, he has a perfect straight hairline. His eyes are blue and he has a great eye area with very minimal upper eyelid exposure. But sadly, he has a negative can-foul tilt. Also, his interocular distance is almost half the ideal ratio. Phil has good bone mass, a wide jawline, and his ramus is even a good length. His nose is too big compared to the rest of his face and has a large bump which is quite noticeable from the side profile view. His lips are too thin and have a bad width compared to the nose. Even though his ears are in a great position, they are too wide and pointing outwards. He has great facial harmony and is easily England's best player. Phil is considered average with an overall rating of 5 out of 10. How attractive is Harry Kane? Because of his large forehead and receding hairline, Harry has a long-shaped face with unbalanced facial thirds. He has high-set cheekbones with a poor jaw and short ramus. His neck width is even below the ideal size. His nose is too big compared to the size of his face. His lips are thin and below the ideal width to nose ratio. Harry's chin has an acute long shape and his ears are too big. They are in a bad position, pointing slightly outwards. He has a negative can-foul tilt with thin eyebrows. Luckily, he has blue eyes, very minimal upper eyelid exposure, and healthy under eyes. Harry Kane is considered an average-looking guy with an overall rating of 4 out of 10. Is Erling Haaland attractive? Haaland has unbalanced facial thirds with a large forehead. Luckily, he has very strong facial bone mass with a good length ramus, a wide jaw, and slightly high-set cheekbones. He even has great neck width compared to the size of his face, but unfortunately, his face is asymmetrical. He has a good eye area with deep-set blue eyes, a positive can-foul tilt, and healthy under eyes. Sadly, Erling has bad interocular distance that is above the ideal ratio, and his eyes are very small for the size of his face. Haaland has very plump lips and a slightly rounded nose, but his lips width to nose width is almost half the ideal ratio. It seems he is lacking thickness in his eyebrows, since there is hardly any visible hairs. Overall, Erling Haaland can be considered average with an overall rating of 4.5 out of 10. How attractive is Kylian Mbappé? Mbappé looks like a turtle. He has unbalanced facial thirds, with his middle third area being too small compared to the other two. His face height to width ratio instead is perfect. He is lacking facial bone mass, having also medium set cheekbones which aren't very visible. He does instead have a very wide neck. He has brown almond shaped eyes with a neutral can-foul tilt. He has no upper eyelid exposure, having a monolid. His interocular distance is below the ideal ratio and his under eyes could be healthier. From the side profile point of view, Mbappe's jaw isn't very visible even if he has a low body fat percentage. He has a short ramus and he has lots of jaw forward growth compared to where his forehead is positioned. His nose is slightly too big and has a downwards bend. Mbappé has thick lips, however his lip width to nose ratio isn't the best as his nose is also very wide from the front. Overall, Kylian Mbappé can be considered average with a rating of 5.5 out of 10. How attractive is Lamine Yamal? Yamal should consider washing his face, however he still is going through puberty, so it's normal. He He has a narrow, long-shaped face with unbalanced facial thirds, with his mid-face being too wide compared to the rest of the sections. He has prominent cheekbones, and his jawline is lacking visibility. His cheekbones are medium set, he has a very short ramus, but at least his jaw has good forward growth with great chin projection. He has brown-colored almond-shaped eyes, a neutral canthal tilt, and minimal upper eyelid exposure. He also has healthy under eyes. Yamal's lips have great thickness, but the lip width to nose ratio is above the ideal ratio as his nose is also slightly wide. However, from the side profile point of view, his nose has a perfect straight shape. His eyebrows are high set and have great thickness. He has slightly hollow cheeks due to his low body fat percentage, and ears which are unfortunately slightly protruding. Lamine Yamal is only 17, so it would be interesting to see if he gets more attractive once he finishes puberty. Overall, Lamine Yamal can be considered below average with an overall rating of 4 out of 10. How attractive is Neymar? Neymar has unbalanced facial thirds, with the upper third being wider than the rest of his face. He does, however, have a very ideal face height to width ratio. He is lacking facial bone mass, with his cheekbones being medium set. Neymar's eyes are brown and almond shaped. They are small compared to the size of his face and very squinted. He does, however, have a positive canthal tilt, and he has almost no upper eyelid exposure. His interocular distance is below the ideal ratio, and his under eyes are quite healthy. From the side profile point of view, his jaw is not very visible. He has a short ramus with a bad gonial angle, and his chin projection is not the best. However, at least his nose is almost perfectly straight. His lips could do with more thickness, and his nose is also slightly too wide from the front, giving him a bad lip width to nose ratio. His eyebrows have good thickness, and ears are slightly protruding. Before I say his rating, you can get your own in our bio now. Overall, Neymar can be considered average with a rating of 6 out of 10. Who should we rate next?